The CEO froze mid-step, the mop's quiet swish drowned out by a cascade of words, fluent, flawless, in a language he hadn't heard since his mother's funeral. In that moment, the man he'd never noticed became impossible to ignore. The steady hum of fluorescent lights filled the 25th floor of Westbridge Global's headquarters, a sound so constant it faded into the background, like the man pushing the mop along the corridor's gleaming tiles. Luca kept his head down, his weathered hands guiding the mop's handle with practiced precision. Each sweep was measured, deliberate, as though the rhythm might drown out the memories of words spoken in 9 languages, of dreams deferred, of classrooms and conferences replaced by empty halls and chemical scents. Luca had arrived before dawn, as always. The office was a temple to steel and glass, modern, cold, indifferent. And yet, he found a strange comfort in its emptiness. No eyes judging him, no polite nods that didn't quite mask the dismissiveness beneath. Just the mop, the bucket, and the quiet space where his mind could drift, to conversations in French and Russian, to childhood debates in Spanish, to gentle songs in Swahili his mother once hummed. But today, that peace fractured. A door clattered open behind him. "God, this merger's going to kill me," muttered a voice thick with fatigue. Nathaniel Drake, CEO Titan, the man whose name graced headlines and inspired LinkedIn think pieces, strode down the hall, phone pressed to his ear. His suit was immaculate, but his tie hung askew, and the sharp lines around his mouth spoke of sleepless nights. "I don't care what their legal says. We're not paying a premium for broken tech," he barked. His steps slowed as he neared Luca, eyes narrowing at the janitor's presence. Luca instinctively stepped back, bowing his head, but as he did, his bucket caught on a floor vent and tipped, water sloshing perilously close to Nathaniel's polished shoes. Nathaniel cursed, snapping his phone shut. "Watch it," he said, voice low but edged. I'm sorry, sir," Luca replied, his accent faint but noticeable, hands trembling as he righted the bucket. Nathaniel's gaze lingered. A flicker of irritation, of something else, something he couldn't name. The janitor's eyes, when they met his for the briefest second, were not the dull, empty eyes he expected. They held depth, intelligence, and sorrow. But the moment passed. Nathaniel waved a hand dismissively and continued down the hall. Hours later, Nathaniel sat at his mahogany desk, staring out over the city skyline, his mind not on the merger, but on those eyes. Why had they unsettled him? Why had that brief connection felt so real? He shook himself. Nonsense. He had work to do. Downstairs, Luca moved through the ground floor, cleaning as the afternoon crowd ebbed and flowed. A group of employees huddled near the elevators, laughing about a foreign client. "I swear, I couldn't understand a word she said." "What was that, Portuguese?" "No, man, Italian." "You're hopeless." Luca paused, heart tugged by the familiar cadence of the words they mocked. Without thinking, he murmured a soft correction, in flawless Italian, just loud enough for himself. But someone heard. Nathaniel. He'd come down to clear his head, to escape his office. And he froze, recognition dawning. Have you ever misjudged someone, only to have them completely surprise you later? Tell me below. I'm reading every story. Of course. Here's an even more engaging, polished, and heartfelt version that flows naturally and draws in your audience. Hello, my beautiful family and friends. I'm so happy to have you here. If you're ready to be part of this special story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And be sure to stay tuned, because tomorrow I'll be back with another story that's just as unforgettable, and you won't want to miss it. Alright, let's begin this journey together. Nathaniel stood motionless behind a marble column, as if the words he'd just heard had rooted him to the spot. The voice was Luca's, there was no mistaking it. But the language, the fluidity, the ease with which those Italian syllables slipped from the janitor's mouth, it didn't fit the man Nathaniel thought he knew. He stepped forward, his shadow falling across the polished floor. "What did you just say?" Nathaniel's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of command. Luca froze, the mop handle gripped like a lifeline. His eyes flicked up, wide with surprise. He hadn't meant to be heard. He hadn't meant anything. "Nothing, sir. Just thinking aloud." In Italian? Nathaniel tilted his head, his sharp gaze searching Luca's face for answers. That was Italian, wasn't it? Luca hesitated. His first instinct was to shrink back, to deflect. But something in Nathaniel's tone wasn't scornful. It was curious. "Yes, sir," he said finally. His voice was low, but steady. It was Italian. Nathaniel crossed his arms, intrigued despite himself. "You speak Italian?" Luca swallowed. "Yes." "And English, obviously." "Yes." Nathaniel took a step closer. "What else?" There was a pause. Luca's shoulders sagged as if the weight of his hidden self was suddenly too heavy to bear. "French, Russian, Spanish, German, Portuguese, Arabic, Swahili, Mandarin." For a second, the hum of the lobby seemed to fade. Nathaniel stared at him, uncomprehending. 9 languages, he echoed, more to himself than to Luca. Luca nodded, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Why?" Nathaniel asked. "How?" Luca gave a small, sad smile. "It's a long story." Nathaniel gestured to a nearby bench. "Then tell me." Luca hesitated, then obeyed. The 2 men sat, CEO and janitor, power and invisibility side by side. Luca began to speak, halting at first, then gaining strength as he told of his life before Westbridge, of his work as a translator, a teacher, a father. Of war tearing apart his home. Of fleeing, of starting over, of being seen only for the uniform he now wore. Nathaniel listened. Really listened. And with each word, something in him cracked, the shell of assumptions, the wall of superiority. By the time Luca finished, silence stretched between them. Nathaniel rose, but there was no dismissal in his stance. There was a purpose. "Come with me," he said. "Sir." "Come. Now." Nathaniel led Luca through the building, past rows of startled employees, up to the top floor. "Everyone," Nathaniel announced as they entered the executive lounge, his voice firm but all right with something new. "This is Luca. He's about to change everything you think you know about this company. What would you do if you discovered someone around you was hiding a brilliant talent? Would you step up? Share your thoughts in the comments." The lounge fell silent. Every head turned. Luca stood just inside the doorway, feeling as though the ground beneath him might open and swallow him whole. He had worked so hard to stay invisible. And now, here he was, on display. Nathaniel's eyes swept the room. "We pride ourselves on global reach, on understanding markets. But here, in our own building, we've overlooked a man who embodies that better than any of us." There was a ripple of whispers, glances exchanged. Some faces showed surprise. Others, skepticism. Luca's heart pounded. He felt their stares like heat on his skin. "Sir," Luca said softly, pulling back, "I think I should go." Nathaniel shook his head. "No. Stay." But Luca was already retreating, mumbling an apology, his hands shaking as he fumbled for the door. He fled the lounge, down the hall, into the stairwell where no one could see the tears brimming in his eyes. Why had he let the words spill out? Why had he let hope, that dangerous old friend, creep in? Nathaniel remained standing in the lounge, watching Luca disappear. His jaw tightened. "Sir, what was that about?" an executive ventured. Nathaniel didn't answer. His mind raced. His instinct had been to celebrate Luca, to bring him into the light. But now he saw the flaw in that impulse. Recognition wasn't enough. He'd thrown Luca into the deep end without a life jacket. Later that night, Nathaniel paced his office. His reflection in the window stared back at him, tired, troubled. He replayed Luca's face, the retreat, the pain in his eyes. "Damn it," he muttered. He'd done it wrong. Down in the basement, Luca changed into his worn coat, his shift over. His hands lingered on the locker door. He thought of his daughter's letters from home. Of the promises he'd made to make something of himself here, to build a future for her. And yet, here he was. A janitor. A man who ran from the first sign of notice. He clenched his fists. Have you ever turned away from something you wanted, because fear held you back? What helped you find your courage? I'd love to read your reflections. Drop them in the comments. Asterisk. The following morning, rain lashed the city in sheets, drumming against the tall windows of Westbridge Global. Nathaniel stared at it from his office, coffee untouched, mind elsewhere. He hadn't slept much. Luca's retreat haunted him. He knew the man wouldn't be back tonight. Not if he could help it. But then came the call. "Sir," said Denise, his assistant, voice urgent. "There's a situation downstairs." Nathaniel was halfway out the door before she finished. In the lobby, the storm had forced employees, clients, and delivery drivers to cluster inside. A power surge had killed the elevators. Emergency lighting bathed the space in a strange pale glow. And there, near the glass doors, Nathaniel spotted him. Luca. Soaked to the bone, having just arrived, no doubt caught in the storm, his coat clinging to him. He looked ready to bolt again. "Luca!" Nathaniel called, striding over. The janitor stiffened. "Sir. No. No running this time. I need your help." Luca blinked, confused. Nathaniel turned to the crowd. A tense group of visitors, clients from Asia, Europe, the Middle East, huddled near reception, trying to understand what had happened. The front desk staff were flustered, unable to calm the chaos. Nathaniel looked at Luca. "Can you translate? Calm them down." Luca hesitated. His instinct said no, fade into the background, stay safe. But then he saw the fear in some of the visitors' faces. The frustration. The need. He drew a deep breath. And stepped forward. One by one, Luca spoke, softly, confidently, switching between tongues as fluidly as a stream carves through rock. Mandarin reassurances. French apologies. Arabic explanations. The tension in the room ebbed like the receding tide. People relaxed. Smiles replaced scowls. And Nathaniel watched in awe. Hours passed before the elevators whirred back to life. By then, word had spread. The janitor who spoke 9 languages. The man who saved the day. Nathaniel clapped Luca on the shoulder. "You didn't just help me. You helped all of us." Luca met his gaze, and for the first time, didn't look away. Have you ever been thrown into a situation where you had no choice but to rise to the occasion? Tell us what happened. I'm inspired by your stories. The rain had passed, leaving the city glistening in the afternoon sun. But inside Westbridge Global, a storm of a different kind lingered, a quiet reckoning, an unspoken shift. Luca finished wiping down a conference table on the 22nd floor, his mind replaying the morning's events. He hadn't expected the gratitude, the nods of respect, the thank yous in many languages from clients and staff alike. But what stayed with him most was Nathaniel's hand on his shoulder. Solid. Warm. Like an anchor. Nathaniel sat alone in his office, gazing at a framed photo of his father, the man who'd built the company from the ground up. The man who'd taught him to value hard work, but perhaps, Nathaniel thought bitterly, also taught him to look down on those who did it in silence. He rose abruptly, driven by something he couldn't name, and went looking for Luca. He found him in the small break room, rinsing a cloth in the sink. "Luca," he said, closing the door behind him. Luca straightened, cautious. "Sit," Nathaniel urged, gesturing to the tiny table. "Please." They sat. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the fridge filled the space. Then Nathaniel asked, "Who were you before here?" Luca hesitated, then began. His words came slowly at first, then faster, as though a dam had broken. He spoke of growing up in Sarajevo, of falling in love with languages as a boy, of scholarships, university, work as a cultural liaison, teaching, translating for diplomats. And then war. The loss of his wife to violence. The desperate flight with his daughter. The endless struggle to survive as a refugee. How here, no one cared about his degrees. No one wanted his mind. Only his hands, his back. Nathaniel listened, jaw tight, throat aching. "I didn't know," he said at last. "Most don't ask," Luca replied, softly. They sat in heavy silence. Outside, the world went on as usual. But inside that break room, something had shifted forever. When you learn someone's hidden story, does it change how you see them? Has it ever happened to you? Share in the comments. I want to hear about it. Days passed, but the memory of that quiet conversation in the break room lingered between Luca and Nathaniel like a fragile thread. Neither man spoke of it openly again, yet something unspoken had changed. Nathaniel began to pause when he saw Luca, offering a nod, sometimes a brief smile. Small gestures, but to Luca, they felt like the sun through heavy clouds. One evening, Well, after most of the office had emptied, Nathaniel found himself pacing the floor, unable to concentrate. The merger was faltering. Tensions among the team ran high. He passed by a windowed meeting room and stopped short. Inside, Luca stood at the whiteboard. Alone. His brow furrowed in concentration, he scribbled words, connected ideas with arrows. French, German, Spanish phrases, terms Nathaniel recognized from their negotiations. Without thinking, Nathaniel pushed the door open. Luca. Luca froze, marker in hand, color rising to his cheeks. I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't. No, Nathaniel interrupted gently. He stepped inside. Please. What is this? Luca hesitated, then spoke, voice low. I heard your team struggling in the hall earlier. I thought, maybe I could map the terms that kept causing confusion. The ones that mean different things in different languages. I thought it might help. Nathaniel stared at the board, at the neat logic of it, the elegant connections. This is brilliant, he said, genuinely awed. Luca looked down, uncomfortable. It's nothing. It's everything, Nathaniel said. You're everything I've been looking for and didn't know it. The words startled even himself. They talked for hours, about the deal, about language, about life. Nathaniel opened up about his father's impossible expectations, about his fear of failing the legacy. Luca shared memories of teaching his daughter chess by candlelight during the blackouts of war. Laughter came, tentative at first, then warm. The kind of laughter that heals. Isn't it incredible how the smallest shared moment can break down the biggest walls? When has that happened to you? Let's talk about it below. Asterisk. The following week, the office hummed with tension. The merger talks teetered on collapse. Rival companies circled like sharks. Nathaniel's sleepless nights returned, his temper fraying at the edges. He pushed his team hard. Harder than before. The weight of his father's legacy felt heavier with each passing hour. Luca noticed. He saw the dark circles beneath Nathaniel's eyes, the clipped tone of his voice in meetings, the way his shoulders bore invisible burdens. He longed to help. But how? Then one morning, Nathaniel summoned Luca to his office. Close the door, Nathaniel said. Luca obeyed, his heart beating faster. I need you at this table, Luca, Nathaniel said, gesturing to the polished conference table where the merger team sat. You understand these clients. You understand the nuances. I want you to advise on the deal directly. Shock rippled through Luca. I can't, he stammered. Sir, I'm a janitor. Not to me. Not anymore, Nathaniel said firmly. But not everyone agreed. Whispers began. Snide remarks. Some executives questioned Nathaniel's judgment. And when the rival company's CEO caught wind of it, he used it as a weapon. A janitor advising the deal? Desperate move, Drake, he sneered during a joint call. Nathaniel flushed with fury. But before he could reply, Luca stood, his voice steady but quiet. With respect, I'm not here to impress you, Luca said. I'm here to make sure the people on both sides understand one another. But the damage was done. Nathaniel saw it in his team's faces, the doubt, the discomfort. Later, in private, Nathaniel snapped. Why did you speak? He demanded. You just gave them ammunition. Luca flinched. I was trying to help. You embarrassed me. Silence. Luca's face crumpled, hurt, betrayal, and shame mixing in his eyes. I see, he said softly. I should never have believed. I should have stayed invisible. He turned and left, leaving Nathaniel alone with the echo of his own harsh words. Have you ever said something in anger that you immediately wished you could take back? What happened next? Share below. I want to learn from your moments too. Asterisk. Nathaniel sat in his office long after Luca had gone, the city lights blinking beyond the glass like distant stars. His words echoed in his mind, relentless. You embarrassed me. He'd meant them in the heat of the moment, but now they tasted bitter, hollow. He pressed his hands to his face, guilt washing over him. Luca had trusted him, opened up, stepped out of the shadows, and Nathaniel had shattered that trust in seconds. His father's voice haunted him, an old memory. Weakness is letting people see you care. But Nathaniel saw it now. Caring wasn't weakness. It was the only strength that mattered. Across the city, Luca walked the dark streets, rain beginning to fall again in a soft drizzle. His coat was thin, the chill sank deep. He thought of his daughter's photo in his wallet, the promise he'd made to her, "I'll build a life we can both be proud of." And here he was, running again. No. He stopped beneath a flickering streetlight, breathing hard. He was tired of running. The next morning, Nathaniel found Luca's locker empty. His heart sank. He'd waited too long. But as he turned from the basement hall, he froze. Luca stood there, dry now in clean clothes, a quiet resolve in his eyes. "I was going to quit," Luca said, voice even. "But then I thought, no more hiding. No more letting fear decide." Nathaniel stepped forward, emotion thick in his throat. "I'm sorry," he said. "Truly. I was wrong. About everything." They stood in silence, the storm between them finally passing. "I can still help with the deal," Luca offered quietly. "If you'll let me." Nathaniel nodded, relief flooding him. "Please." When faced with pride or vulnerability, what choice did you make? What would you do if you were Luca or Nathaniel? Let's talk about it in the comments. Asterisk. The boardroom buzzed with tension as the final merger meeting began. Representatives from both companies sat stiffly, wary from weeks of conflict. But this time, at Nathaniel's right hand, Luca stood tall, no mop, no uniform, just a man at last seen for who he was. Nathaniel opened the meeting. "I've made mistakes," he began, his voice steady, eyes meeting those around the table. "In this deal. In how I've led. But today, we do it differently. We listen. We understand." He turned to Luca, giving him the floor. Luca spoke, not as a janitor, not as a subordinate, but as a man fluent not just in language, but in the art of connection. He bridged gaps, clarified terms, soothed tempers. His words, precise and respectful, wove unity where there had been division. By midday, the deal was done. Not through force, not through pride, but through understanding. Weeks later, Westbridge Global announced the creation of a new division, Global Cultural Relations. And at its helm, Luca. At the launch event, Nathaniel stood before the assembled staff, pride shining in his eyes. "I overlooked Luca for too long," he said. "But today, we celebrate what happens when we truly see one another." Luca stepped up to speak. The applause that greeted him was thunderous. "I thought I had to hide who I was to survive," he said quietly. "But I see now, being seen is the only way we truly live." As the crowd dispersed, Nathaniel and Luca stood side by side, gazing out at the city. "You kept your promise," Nathaniel said. Luca smiled, pulling a photo from his wallet, a girl with his eyes and her mother's smile. "For her," Luca said softly. And for once, both men felt the weight of the past lift, leaving only hope. What's the most powerful moment of recognition you've ever witnessed or experienced? How did it change you? Share your story below. I'd love to hear it. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I'm sure you enjoyed it, didn't you? We have plenty more beautiful and interesting stories waiting for you. So go ahead, click the image on your screen and enjoy the next one.